How about some savory scones for breakfast instead of all that sweet stuff? But if you got a sweet tooth, we'll serve it with a little jam. Let's get cooking with style. So putting together these savory scones, we're going to do the wet ingredients first because we're going to be actually grating, if you can imagine that, grating our butter as opposed to using it as melted. A little milk there, a little bit of cream cheese, and then to that I'm going to add my egg. And these ingredients will set aside while we get the dry ingredients all put together. So we don't have to mix this up super well, but just enough to get everything incorporated. Get the egg, the cream, and the cream cheese all mixed together. And you can leave it a little bit lumpy because those lumps of cream cheese in the scones will actually add to the flavor and make them a little bit creamy in the spots where the cream cheese is. All right, so that's mixed perfectly right now. We're going to set this to the side. And we're going to do something that you're probably going to go, really? You're going to do that? So we're going to put our dry ingredients in. We've got our flour here. Got a little bit of pepper, about a quarter teaspoon. We're going to take baking soda. And the one thing you want to do is make sure your baking soda is fresh. We're going to use a tablespoon because over time this stuff can kind of lose its punch, as it were. And then to that, we're going to put a tablespoon of salt. And then we're going to make sure that we mix our dry ingredients first before we start incorporating anything wet. And now the part where you're going to go, really? Grating butter. Well, I put this in the freezer first. And the reason I'm doing it this way is you see how nice and stringy that is? It looks just like cheese. The reason why is because most folks have a cheese grater, but how many of you have this? A pastry knife. So with the cheese grater, I can get my butter kind of really thin and incorporate it into the flour, and that's going to give it a nice flakiness. At some point, you want to mix that grated butter into the flour, and then go ahead and put the other half of the 3/4 of a stick of butter that you've got into your flour mixture, and then we'll put it all together. All right, that's the end of the butter in there right now. Give this one more little toss. And now we're going to put in our dry ingredients. And this is a savory scone, so you can put in whatever you like. So why not do a little bit of cheddar cheese? We're going to throw in some scallions, green onions, and some bacon, because you know what I always say, bacon makes everything better. Mix the dry ingredients together, and now we're going to incorporate the wet. And this is what we've got here, our cream cheese and cream mixture. And this again is going to take a few minutes, so I'll get it started, and then when we're done I'll show you what we're going to do next. All right, you can see how this has pretty much come together. We have to finish it up on the cutting board here. So we put a little bit of flour down, spread that around, and this is when it gets a little messy, but hey, a little bit of mess to make sure it's really good is where it all happens. All right, so we get most of that ingredients out there. Keep your flour around, and we're going to take this and press it together. Roll it over, press it together, and now we're going to start forming kind of like an oblong shape here, because this is where we make our scones and we get that nice look to them. And you might need to use a little more flour, so just put that on top. There we go. Okay, so pick up the little pieces that are on the side. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to refrigerate it for just a little bit. So nice triangles. Put them on our board here, our pan. And we'll set these in the fridge for about a half an hour before we bake them. All right, last one. Get it on the plate. I'm going to pop these in the fridge and then we'll get them in the oven. Scones have been in the refrigerator for about a half hour. The reason I put them in there is because we've got all that butter fat and other things, and we don't want them to collapse on the cookie sheet here. I've also lightly oiled this because I've got that cheese in there, and that'll stick. We're gonna do one more step before we pop these in the oven, and all I'm gonna do is just take a little bit of that heavy cream, and I'll do one and show you what I mean, and then I'll do the rest and we'll get them in the oven. So that heavy cream, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of this feta cheese and sprinkle it over the top. I'll do the rest and then we'll pop them in the oven. All right, there's our last one, that nice feta cheese over the top. And in the oven we go. And in about 15, 18 minutes, those will be done. All right, hot out of the oven. You want to serve these pretty soon when they come out of the oven. The one thing you really want to do is make sure you get them off this pan or off the cookie sheet, because there's cheese in there and you can see it's sticking already. But we get these off here while it's hot and they'll come off. That one, it's probably not going to come off as easy. So for television, we'll just leave it there. There we go. Anyway, I like an odd number here. These savory scones are a perfect way to have breakfast and then put a little jam with them. The sweet and savoriness of all this is going to be spot on. If you'd like this recipe for our savory scones, go to our website, cbs8.com/recipes. Enjoy from Cooking with Styles.